Hello. End of February, early March 2022, war. Looking at the planets for an objective perspective, if that's possible to have such a thing, on this war is what I thought I would try to do today. Wars are always horrific, always, in endless ways, and watching it all over the world makes it a world event. Affects everyone, not just the individuals at war. I have Putin's chart here, and I have the United States of America's chart here. When we look at Russia's chart, there's no accurate birth time, and there's great debate as to which chart is the accurate one. Most astrologers pick dates within the month of December 1991. And during that whole month, whichever date you choose for the Russian chart, Pluto was at 22 degrees of Leo that whole month. That's a significant point, as in terms of what's coming. But wars are always horrific, and it's horrendous to be at a distance and helpless and watch it all go down on TV or whatever video, whatever screen you're looking at. First time that happened was Vietnam, and I have clear memory of watching television and watching American soldiers die, be blown up. Right there in the battle, we had news people running along, trying to survive. It was startling for the world, and it was relevant in terms of the protests that came out of that period against that war. But we can look at Ukraine's chart, and what is very clear there at this time is Saturn is squaring Pluto, Pluto being the planet of power in a country's chart. Saturn's squaring that Pluto right now. Saturn is also conjunct the moon in the Ukraine's chart right now. And that's a very repressive, restrictive energy on the moon, on the home, on the feelings, on the land, on the home, on the mother country. In May, June, July of this year, Neptune is going to be opposite Mars for the Ukraine. So their forces, their assertive, outgoing energies are going to be limited there. Do they hold their own until then? Not something I would want to predict. But they're clearly having a very difficult time in May, June, July of this year, and in early next year when Saturn is opposite the Sun in the Ukraine's chart. It'll be a difficult time, but so much has been destroyed already in their country. Even if these negotiations go through, they're talking about, and somehow it stops, the Ukraine will take an awfully long time to recover and rebuild its infrastructure, at best. When we look at the USH chart, it's very, very relevant. And we look at the world's transits, it's very, very relevant as to what is going on now. Before doing that, I want to take a look at Putin's chart. Something significant is happening here. He really did not have good timing. Saturn is traveling along close to his residence, close to his land, close to his home. Here we see Pluto, the planet of power in Mr. Putin's chart, right at the top of the chart. He's in control. He's in absolute power. But Saturn is just entering the 4th house. And in February, early February, Saturn was trining his Sun. And as he entered into the Ukraine a few days ago, Saturn was trining Saturn. So things looked very positive. And in early February, the Chinese leader visited Mr. Putin, and possibly Mr. Putin thought, I'm having some serious support from this side of the situation. They'll keep me going if the West gives me trouble. And possibly China is watching to see what goes on here as to make a judgment as to whether they go into Taiwan or not in a similar fashion. But in Mr. Putin's chart, I don't know why I call him that, but in Putin's chart, Saturn is entering his residence, and now it's finishing with these trines, these favorable angles, and it's opposing Pluto, squaring Jupiter. The Saturn square Jupiter starts immediately. We have Saturn squaring Jupiter in his chart, kicking into effect very quickly. We're talking getting squeezed. This happens in March, this month, that Saturn squares Jupiter. Saturn is opposite Pluto for him in April. So it's not long at all before the power and force against him is becoming the dominant thing that he's dealing with. What's really relevant is transiting Uranus in his chart. That one-time cycle through a person's chart. Uranus has never hit his Jupiter before. Jupiter, the planet of prosperity, position in government. And Uranus is going to come and make contact, make a conjunction with that Jupiter for him. It comes very, very close in August of this year. Will he lose his power there? Or will it be in 2023 when Uranus is precisely on top of his Jupiter in the month of May 2023? This is when we'll probably see the end of Mr. Putin in terms of being a leader of that country. I'm not saying he'll be dead. I'm just saying that his whole situation will change and his prosperity level will change dramatically. So things don't look very good for Mr. Putin. Now, here we have the USA's chart. I think we've seen this many times, but what's really relevant is this Pluto. Transiting Pluto is back where it started from for the first time in 250 years for the US of A. Now we've been watching this build, watching it come, this Pluto conjunct Pluto. It has come so close several times in the last 2 years and been opposite Mercury in the house of death and the larger financial picture. But it was never precise, it was never exact. February, March, right now, Pluto is precisely conjunct Pluto in the USA's chart in the second house. That's the money house. Now that's where their power stems from. And that's what's going to be activated in a big, big way. And that's from where they're going to fight this war. It'll be a financial push of such large magnitude that I truly believe we're going to see the Russian finances literally collapse. And the world finances are going to be turned upside down, possibly collapse as well. But more of a designed restyling afterwards and during this time period of extreme change. And we are slowly coming into the time period for the world as Pluto's getting to the tail end, the end of Capricorn. It's at 27 degrees right now. But by next year, 2023, it's at 0 Aquarius, and that's so dramatic. It reflects such a big shift, a whole new era beginning, which means a lot has to change between now and 2024 when that entry fully takes place. So in the USA's chart, this great big Pluto return is taking place in the money house. And the very first contact of that is going to be activated this week, this coming week, the first week in March. Because Mars is traveling along in Capricorn, and it's also going to be at 27 degrees. They're both going to be conjunct the USA's birth Pluto in the coming week, the first week in March. Power, financial power being expressed, not just from the US, But wherever they have their influence, and throughout the world, as we know, and we're seeing this come from everywhere, certainly from Europe, major changing times. What was established after World War II, 45, is all shifting and changing through this. Whether this is what Mr. Putin thought he was doing or not. So the world's finances are going to be turned upside down. And as long as Pluto's still in Capricorn, death and war, taking down our collective systems, is really going to become extreme. Big challenges in 2022, 23, 24 for all of us, but certainly, of course, more so for the people of Ukraine and the people of Russia. Supply shortages, food shortages, rationings, no gas, very expensive gas if you can find it. This will take place in varying degrees, of course, in different countries. But it'll affect everyone. Certainly extremes for Ukraine and Russia. But even a financial collapse, a shifting of dramatic extremes in the world, is much, much better than a nuclear insanity. So in May, things surge and pick up somehow, some way. Something takes place in May, because that's when Jupiter enters Aries. Aries, that sign of new beginnings. Hopefully it's over with by then. Somehow we're focused on the new beginnings. My goodness, that would be wonderful. Alternatively, Aries is, of course, the sign of war, and a big surge of Jupiter entering Aries in May can be possibly expected. Mercury's retrograde there. And it's also the time period when in Canada's chart, something repeats that has only happened once in their history, and that was when they entered World War II. So it may just be wrapped up a step somehow, some way in that, continuing in that part of the world, I don't know. But May is a significant time to take a look at in terms of energies building at that point. So the USA is having their very first hit of Pluto conjunct Pluto right now. There will be 4 hits. The second one is July of this year. Will that be a major rebirth in their own finances and their own infrastructure, investment in that? One would hope. Or is it a continuing battle and war experience that involves finances in a large way? We'll wait and see. But the second hit is in July of this year. And then we come into the late fall, into the beginning of early next year, and things become very dramatic on the planet at that point. And this is something we've been watching come for a very long time, this huge shift of Pluto from Capricorn to Aquarius. And of Jupiter re-entering Aries for a second time. It first starts in October. October, November, December. Jupiter backs up out of Aries into Pisces, and Mars is retrograde. Now, Mars is retrograde, Mars being the planet of war, frequently, historically, when wars are engaged in a large fashion. Not always, but it's a common energy that is simultaneous in history with war. So Mars will be retrograde all October, November, December of 2022 and January of 2023. And Jupiter returns to Pisces for that same period. And by that point, Mars will be here, entering the house of war and conjunct Uranus for the whole month of January 2023. And that probably requires another whole video. But without getting into detail more and more and more of that period, there are extreme energies building and surging at different times this year in regards to this war, this dramatic change, that's shifting, that's taking place on the planet in terms of who's in power. The people? That's what we're going towards, because Pluto is going towards Aquarius. So more and more protests, more and more people on the streets, more and more people actively engaged in whatever war experiences are going on. We can expect that. The old order is dying. And because Pluto's entering into Aquarius, people need to be a part of that newness. So the last hit of Pluto conjunct Pluto for the USA is in 2023. And somehow we're into a whole new phase by the mid to late 24, and by 25, 26, 27, that's 2025, 2026, 2027. Remember, those 3 years in a row, there's exceptionally unusual outer planet, Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn. They're all happily interacting with each other with trines and sextiles. Very unusual that they get along that well for that long period of time. So these are some of the things going on. I would take hope from looking at Putin's chart that he will not be in power ad infinitum off into the future. He is in trouble. And this country certainly is. And the whole planet and all of us are riding a crazy wave of transition. Take care, empathy for each other, caring for each other, community involvement. This is what's required, and this is what we'll do. Stay safe.